Alrighty, but yeah, that duality. I'm not trying to like make people feel like self-conscious, but I definitely realize it's a dangerous duality, and because spiritually they're they're supposed to be at odds with each other, but maybe it's one of those where it's just like just it's the battle of it's the flesh battling with the spirit just in a different way, where people are like, we're supposed to be proponents of the truth because God is the truth. Jesus is the truth, the way, and the light. But yeah, maybe I would say it's more than likely that, not to offer excuses, but perspective. So stuff like that was happening though. Like what I made mention of in the previous video, that I'm not looping these together. It's going to be a part one, two, and three. But it's, weirdo stuff like, yeah, she's up here and up, more and more and more people like coming up there where it's just like, what started off as like two people, now all of a sudden it's just packed up there. And it's just like a lot of, just monitoring. So I keep returning to the first church in the interim because I'm looking for a church home. So in the interim, in spite of those things that have taken place at the church, I have my baby baptized there. And while we're waiting for service to start, I think, I'm making notes and I'm just talking about how it feels. And one of the things that happened, it was so weird. Is it smelled like, I was about to say it smelled like death, but it smelled like the bathroom in there. It smelled like there had been like some sort of a like incident. And I've never smelled a dead person before, but it smelled like it smelled like there had been like not like somebody went in there and like blew it up and like had like, well, I feel like I broke it down just saying blew it up, like you know what I'm talking about. It didn't smell like that, but it just smelled like the bathroom in there. And there was like persecution that day in the lobby from this guy who I know he didn't recognize me, but I recognized him. And he had actually paid for me to go on a trip, on like a retreat with one of the ministries during my pregnancy. So I had gone to some sort of an event at church, and I got to talking to him and his wife, and we all took a liking to each other. And he made mention of some trip, and I was like, I'd like to go, but I didn't have the money to go, and so he paid for me to go. And but there was like that he was saying something about like he was calling me weird or something like that in the lobby while I was waiting for my daughter to go and change into the clothes she was going to wear to get baptized. And I had like been experienced like, of course, a lot of witchcraft, but specifically this was the period when the vultures would be sitting on top of the hotel that I was staying in at the time. So this was during a period where I was in between places. As you can see, God has restored me, and He's going to continue to restore me and to restore my family. But we were in a bad spot at that time. Well, not even a bad spot because we had all of our needs were met. But some of the warfare that I had made mention of when I began talking about the first church, were just trying to stop me from getting there. That was one of the things where I would wake up and feel like this heavy, heavy, heavy presence, like this heavy, like just heavy spirit. And sometimes something would say, go outside. And I think it wasn't this trip, but one of those times there was like a row of vultures sitting just all along the top of the roof. And I got to praying and they just started leaving one by one. But anytime those vultures would be anywhere around, man, it would just like the vibe would be so very heavy and so thick. And like it would just be different. But the guy, he was actually, no, that was separate. So the vultures at the church, at the hotel, was something that had happened before I joined. This time it was the normal warfare, but I can feel it being done. One of the things that God has revealed to me since then, of course, is that sometimes with some of us, when we're about to go somewhere where we're gonna be around people who we're going to interact with, sometimes witchcraft will be thrown right then, especially if there's any kind of like monitoring or follow spirits. There will be those attacks right then to basically throw you off, so you won't be yourself. Anyway, so there was a lot of that going on. It was like I was trying so hard to just maintain, but it was so much warfare. So baby goes ahead and she gets baptized, and she changes out of her clothes and changes into her regular clothes, and the we're sitting all the way in the back and there's nobody back there. But then all of a sudden some people start coming in, and one of them does this thing that I've seen a lot of women do when I've sensed witchcraft in a church, and she leans forward and she kind of like leans down, like with her forearms against her knees, and she's putting her head down, and it's one of those things that I just have noticed when I sense witchcraft, and it's usually the person that I think is doing the witchcraft is doing that. And I didn't have the knowledge then to pay attention to specifically what their hands are doing, to see if they're doing that clock it thing that is actually witchcraft, is actually something that witches do when they're cursing. But you guys call it clocking, but it's actually sorcery. But she was doing that, and then somebody else, a lady was sitting next to me, and she was talking to a spirit. She was talking to somebody, and on the channel I made mention of people talking to spirits. That reminds me, talking to a spirit. So the lady sitting next to me, she like says something, and she actually says one of the accusations that have been being thrown around now, but it's almost like she went into a like quiet place and then came out of it, and said this, you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, no, like, no, because what she said, I'm just like, ooh, that's not true. But I wonder, at the time, is that something that is supposed to be, is what is said something that is supposed to be true, or something that, or is it like, let me read what is something that this person is concerned, like, let me try to sense this person's fears. Like, what is one of the most just horrible things that you could say about this person, and then they reveal that, or are they like, I don't know. Anyway, because I'm just like, well, it's certainly not something where it's just like, oh, okay, I'm trying to sense out and see what's, like, it's certainly not a seeking the truth. And of course not, because sorcery comes from the devil, and the devil is the father of all lies. So, So, anyway, we're sitting in the back, there's nobody back there at first, but then all of a sudden more and more and more people start coming in, but we're not early in the service anymore. Like we're late, like in the service. And that's not to say that that's not normal, I guess, for people to show up super duper late like that. But more and more people start coming in, but they're whispering and they're muttering, um and it seemed weird. Like we had communion, and it almost seemed like, I remember we took our communion early, like off a little bit, because remember I said that that I'd been under a lot of spiritual warfare that day, and I couldn't see. I either wasn't looking or I did not have my glasses, but I couldn't see. Um, and I thought he said that everybody had gone ahead and broken bread, but I guess he didn't, because we took ours early. Like I had been back there praying, and we took ours. I remember I had 2 wafers in mine that time in my communion, and I took them, and we took ours early. But it felt like he saw, or like everybody saw or something. Like it was so. It just felt off. But anyway, so on the way home, I'm praying, I'm worshiping, and things like that. And on my way back to Maryland. And then maybe a week or two later, I go back to church number 3. And there's a bulletin saying, announcement, and he's saying, yeah, my dear friend is coming to visit. And it just so happens to be the same pastor over church number 1. And I was just like, like, I didn't know how to feel about it. Like, is that a blessing or is it something else? And I didn't know how to feel about it. So he comes to visit, however many weeks later, and I didn't feel anything that said that I needed to go and say anything and say, hey, I'm actually a member of your church back all the way, on the southeast where your congregation is. That's totally not anywhere near Baltimore, Maryland. I didn't feel like I needed to say anything, so I didn't. But I had an experience where I'm on my way home, and I'm feeling that watching, and it's where I swear I'm just like, I'm feeling like I'm hearing him in addition to those who always monitor. And that's where I'm just like, are all of these people participating in what it is that I'm experiencing, or is this manipulation?